Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Product Health Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jenny Rood, founder of Dispute Buddy, entrepreneur, and natural product thinker with a non-traditional path into tech. From turning her home into a top-tier Airbnb through clever customer research, to scaling a regional magazine, and now building a legal tech startup from personal experience, Jenny's story is all about deep empathy and smart product instincts. In this episode, we talk about staying in the problem space, running lean customer discovery, and building products that truly solve painful, emotional problems, even before writing a line of code. But before we dive in, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Dummy. Dummy is a Chrome extension that helps product teams create instant, one-click bug reports with video replay and technical info, making it super easy to share and solve software issues fast when you're testing software. Click the link on the show notes to get started for free today, or go to dummy.com, that's dumni.com. Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Hey,
I really appreciate it. So let's get into it straight away. I guess you have a different background because you didn't start out in product right away, but you naturally applied product thinking early on in your career. How did you first realize you were thinking like a product manager?
Well, I think it would be hard to imagine anyone in Australia or New Zealand coming from like a traditional product background because the phrase is quite new, right? It's been around in Silicon Valley for a while, but product manager is it's not a new concept in terms of like listening to your customer, which is really, you're just the advocate for your customer, aren't you? But it definitely isn't. It's only a recent job, I suppose, in Australia and New Zealand. So everybody who's in it here comes from a non-traditional background. So when I think about really where it started was, it actually goes quite a long way back. After I'd separated from my husband about sort of 11, 12 years ago, I had 3 really young children. And I was trying to find a way of diversifying my income. I was doing some freelance writing. And then I recognized this opportunity to Airbnb my house. I had lots of bedrooms. My kids were quite little. And so an Airbnb market was quite kind of young where I live in Mount Maunganui in Aotearoa, New Zealand, which is a really beachy town. So I completely repainted and refurnished everything in Kmart white. And the reason why I did that was because I asked 2 friends who were my target market, who I wanted to come and rent my house. They're basically really lovely people from very much higher economic group than me, who wanted to go away, who went away on like girls' weekends and things with like their 50-year-old mates. And they went and did these like tours and had drank wine and things like that. And I was like, that's who I want in my house. So I sat down with her and said, what do you look for? What are you looking for in Airbnb? And I showed her some houses that looked like, that were charging a lot of money. And I said, what's making you want to rent there? And she said, one of the ones the woman said was, she goes, oh, I love that art. Look at their artwork. It's so beautiful. I would go and stay there just to see that artwork. So what I did was I went and rented, just on that, I went and rented a load of really high-end artwork and put it in my house, which wasn't a high-end house. And I was able, and then she talked as well about looking at houses that had a lot of white and were really clean. So I'd put Kmart white stuff through my house, and then went and got a friend, swapped some writing with a friend who photographed, and then advertised my house, and got really high rates, mainly from the artwork and the white. And I learned that from like just listening to her. I would never have thought of that. I'm not the demographic. I'm not the target demographic. And the second sort of place that I really think of where product played a role like that was when my husband Matt and I bought Uno magazine, which we bought in 2015. It was a failing regional but beautiful magazine in Bay Plenty, Aotearoa. And we realized really quickly when we talked to all the advertisers that they were being sold packages like buy 4 adverts over the period of a year as a quarterly mag and get a free editorial. And when I talked to them, some of them didn't want the editorial and some of them only wanted the editorial. So I was like, why aren't we just giving them what they want? And the more I looked into it, the more, because we'd never owned magazines before, we didn't know the playbook for any magazines. So I just asked customers what they wanted in the mag, and then we just put together packages for them. And that's kind of really the genesis of product. When Dispute Buddy started, I was advised by someone, don't spend as long as you can in the problem space, not the solution space. And I was like, what's that? And then I kind of went down this rabbit hole and found Dan Olson and the Lean Product Playbook. And I used it like a textbook at the start of the business.
It's incredible to hear that you were doing the product work without knowing that it was product work. And I think that it links to how intuitive actually you need to be when you're thinking about products, and just really listening to that customer, like you said, is the most important thing. And that's basically what it means to be a product person. So, for someone that is new to product, it can be a little bit hard to know what's important, what to focus on. What do you think that somebody that just started working in a product role, and so maybe product managers or a product owner, what do they get wrong in the early days, and what can they do differently?
I don't know if it's so much about getting wrong. I think being a product manager is a very human job, isn't it? You're the advocate. You're like inside the business, but you are advocating for the customer. But then if you look at your role inside the business, let's say you are the customer's advocate. They want this. This is what they want. First of all, they probably haven't told you in those many words, I would like this. No one comes and says, I'll rent a house if you've got expensive artwork on the walls. They don't say that. They say other things that you've got to try and surmise what they're saying. So that's the first thing that's really hard, is you've got to translate what customers are saying to you. But the other thing that's really hard is you then have to balance that. You have to then turn around and go, okay, well, this is what the customer wants. Well, engineering, is that possible? Oh, and by the way, marketing, is that how do we speak to people with these sorts of things? And then also design, how do we communicate that visually? And then how do we work within the constraints that all those different businesses got? And then also, by the way, are we inadvertently building something unsafe into our product by doing these things? So you're handling a lot of things. I don't know if it's necessarily getting things wrong. It's more being aware that all the time that there are trade-offs and constraints, and making sure that you're testing as hard as you can to make sure that what you're building is what the customers want, and that you're also testing to make sure that you're not building something unsafe. I'll try and give an example of that. This is quite a heavy thing to say, but I think it's really relevant. If you look at all of the big tech companies around the world, they're all built predominantly by white men who are not the victims of online or in real life sexual, domestic, any kind of violence and harassment. Not at all, but mostly. And so the systems that they build, because they're unaware of that, they don't experience it. They don't really build any guardrails or safeguards in it. So it allows it to flourish around the edge. And that's what and then you've got a real problem, because how do you stop it once you've kind of allowed it? That's kind of what I mean about thinking about safety. And that really involves bringing lots of different viewpoints in very early, who are able to say to you, hey, if you do that, you might have this unintended consequence, which you might not have been aware of.
Yeah, for sure. So making sure that you are interviewing as many different stakeholders as you can, so that you have the full picture and not just your perspective, or like a small perspective of the overall, I guess, demographic.
Yeah. I think also when you talk about interviewing, I'm also really aware all the time of going, is my style of interviewing going to reaffirm the biases that I have? Or is it going to unearth a new viewpoint, which I don't know about? And that's really the crux of product as well, isn't it?
How do you do that? How do you make sure that when you're interviewing and talking to people, you're really asking the right questions so there's no bias, and also asking the questions that will lead you to the right conclusions?
Oh gosh, Julia, that's such a magical question. Oh, the answer is this, and this is how we do it, and it's perfect. There's no never. So I think probably the most important thing is to always know that you're going to have bias. I go to every single conversation knowing that I take my bias with me, and the whole thing about bias is it's unconscious. So you've got no idea where your biases lie. So that's the first thing I sort of take. So I always try and think of it as this, how do I clean the muddy windows of the bias in my eyes and mind and ears, so that I can fully inhabit the words or the sentiments that are coming towards me from someone who's got a completely different life experience. And so usually what I try and do, and I mean, all these things aren't rocket science. I've sort of watched and observed these. And also, don't forget, I've interviewed, from owning a magazine publishing company, I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of really both high profile people, really successful people, and all sorts of different people. And so learn a lot about how do I make people feel comfortable so that they can tell me the things that are really going on inside them and share some deep insight that they didn't even know that they had really articulated before. That's really that kind of something that I was aiming for. Mainly, it's how you should enter everything is be really invested and interested in the person that you're talking to. Really, truly try and leave all of your questions as open as possible. Tell me a bit about what happened for you today. What was that like? Like that, it's really simple questions, and then just sit back. I mean, you can hear that I'm quite used to talking a lot. I really love listening a lot as well. You just pick up so much.
So what you do is that you try to listen more, ask more open-ended questions, and kind of see where the conversation takes you, which I think is an awesome strategy. Easier said than done, I think.
It really is. But I think the other thing is you kind of see where the conversation takes you, but you're looking for some groups of information. So I try and like listen quite hard and go, oh, that sounded like they were fearful of something. Oh, they were like, yeah, I like this, but I probably wouldn't. I mean, for instance, like with Dispute Buddy, I did a round of testing on 30th of December. As you can imagine, the cohort of people that I managed to find to do a testing cohort for my Figma designs was kind of narrow, and I had to hold that in my mind as well. But one of the things that we'd put in our Figma design was that because with Dispute Buddy, you're finding and extracting all the text and messages you need to build a legal case. You download our app, you plug in your phone to your desktop. This is the earliest iteration. It's going to get more complex, but you plug in your phone, and then one of the things, and so that we can kind of find and extract the text, and then we present it to you in a PDF output at the end and organize into issues of the case. One of the steps in it is that if you plug in your phone, you may have a cable that's not suitable for data transfer. And so I had put a little dialog box saying, check your cable. Like if our system recognizes the cable doesn't work, check your cable. And I noticed for all 5 people that we tested, none of them clicked on the link to check that would have enabled them to check the cable. And in the testing, I reckon 4 out of the 5 of them said, I would do anything. They did about 4 or 5 things before clicking on the link. They didn't want to click on the link. So like it's like listening out for those and going, what does that mean? It's like, it's a fear, right? That's a fear. It's rooted in a fear. It's not an I don't want to. You've got to understand why people don't want to. So I'm always listening at an open-ended things about where can I group these ideas that they're talking about? Is that a fear? Is that an irritation? Is that a curiosity? Is that an unknown? All those different things. Is that excitement?
That's really interesting that you're talking about the testing, because it sounds like what you did is to watch them while they were using the product to see how they're using the product, and then I assume interview them and ask questions about it afterwards.
No, I do it all at the same time. I do it all at the same time. And I think, with every product, there's a different opportunity. I'm just about to I've got a meeting booked in a couple of days with Nick Vardakis, who's one of my mentors in Dispute Buddy. I like to have a whole suite of mentors at any one time. And he's really expert at user testing and in legal tech. And one of our challenges in Dispute Buddy, coming up with this next round of user testing, because we've got our MVP is all but finished, the design, the build. And so I want to do like a couple of cohorts of testing, is that there's a gap. So when the person plugs in their phone, we've got to wait somewhere between probably 5 or 10 minutes and maybe an hour and a half for the extraction to finish. And I'm kind of like, how are we going to manage that? What do we do? How do we monitor them? Because usually I do it all like this on Zoom. We can't have someone sitting there for an hour and a half. How are we going to manage? How are we going to monitor what their sentiments are around this sort of thing? So yeah, I like to see people when they're doing stuff, because you can see them going like this sort of thing. And they might say, oh yeah, that was great, but they're going like that. And so they're scratching their face up, which tells you that they're thinking something else other than, oh, that's great.
Yeah, amazing. That's really good. It sounds like a really good way to figure out very quickly how people are feeling about the product without them having to tell you.
I mean, one thing that you can kind of test all the time, I'm trying to remember the link. I'll try to remember to send it to you, Julie, and then you can put it in the show notes. That I got given by, I think it was Ben King, who was one of our tech mentors and tech stars. It was like a heat map thing that you can see when people go on your website and use your product, where they're heat mapping. So it gives you an idea of your user experience. But what I like to do is I've built my own kind of whole system in Notion where I've got a script that I pull them through. So I ask exactly the same questions every single time so that I've got the same, I can keep coming back to the same basis for where I'm asking people questions to encourage like similarity of data. I like share a link with them and then get them to like put the link up, and then I observe them and write notes at the same time, as well as recording the screen as well. That works for obviously for things like Figma designs, and it can work for your product, but it all depend on what your product is. If you've got a desktop app, you might have to be flicking around if they've got to download a desktop app and all this sort of thing. So I like to spend a lot of time beforehand going, what is the highest quality information that I could get out of this interaction? Is it me watching them? Is it them using it and then me asking them how they feel? Is it me talking to them about once they've got the output? Like what is it? And then I try and design a process that's as least invasive as possible for them, that allows me to extract the most data as possible.
I guess going into that topic of you building Dispute Buddy and thinking about how to extract the information from the users and how to really figure out their feedback, what do you think is the most valuable lesson that you've learned when you first started building Dispute Buddy?
Well, the most valuable lesson I learned is probably the most uncomfortable one. It's probably the most uncomfortable one to think about, really. And as all valuable lessons are, which is that very early on in Dispute Buddy, I went through co-founder split. So Dispute Buddy started out as 2 co-founders. And when we were in the kind of early stage of customer discovery and user testing, it became really clear that we had really different styles of running the business. And I think that that's totally fine that people have different styles, but it doesn't necessarily lead to cohesion in the business. So I knew that I needed to call it before we went to market and before we raised more capital. So we'd already raised a portion of investment, but I didn't want to get into market and then it would become an even bigger problem. And so what I did was, I suppose quite similar to product, I was like, what is the most fair and thoughtful way to do this? And so I first of all, I said to my co-founder, why don't you have the choice of taking the business forward or not? Because it was her idea originally when we got together. But ultimately she decided she didn't want to. So after kind of a protracted sort of negotiation and decisions and stuff, she decided to give me her shares. And so here we are. So that was a really valuable lesson. It enabled me to really be so singular on my style of customer focus, taking the business forward on my own. Like there's lots of benefits of owning a business together, and I had lots of benefits of owning it together with my co-founder early on. But I really like the feeling now of owning it on my own, because as soon as I get an insight from a customer, I can decide how I'm going to use that really quickly. I don't have to kind of discuss it or anything like that. So yeah, I think it really taught me, the most valuable lesson it probably taught me, for me, not for everybody, is that I need to run this on my own.
You talked a lot about using resources as a way to learn more about what to do with customers interview or with product management. So do you have any resources that you think have been really helpful on your journey, and did those resources change the way that you approach business and product?
There are so many amazing resources out there. Okay, so in the early stages, when going back to this person that gave me the advice, who was running a startup, and I asked them for advice because we'd sold this magazine publishing business. I'd joined Enterprise Angels in Tauranga, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I was on the board there. But I was starting to build my own startup, and I knew that there were some really different things going on in here that I needed to think about. So I said to them, what's the most important thing I should be thinking about? And they said, stay in the problem space. So when I kind of Googled around, I think they gave me actually, they said, go and watch Dan Olson Product Market Fit. They said, there's loads of videos of it on YouTube. So I did. And it was literally like, it was like taking the red pill, or what, the Matrix thing. I took a step into a world that I just didn't know existed. I'd never even considered the difference between the problem space and solution space. I had a real fast realization that this was the entire, that I felt like the success of Dispute Buddy landed on this, staying really deep, getting so close to the problem and spending as long as possible there. So I literally every day would go into, in the early days, we would go into BNZ, where we had there was they've got free rooms there, free working rooms in New Zealand for people who've got an account there. So we set up our business account with BNZ and just go book a meeting room, these really nice fancy meeting rooms with big whiteboards and free tea and coffee, and go in there and open up the Lean Product Playbook and be like, okay, we're on chapter 2 now. It was like used it like a textbook in at school. And so what was so good is that each of these pages, you go, okay, what does Dan say that we should do now? It might be starting to learn about like writing a persona or designing a cohort of people to interview. But I was able to, as I read through this theory, I was like I'm not learning this from scratch. I've got all these things like the Airbnb story and in Uno, how we've run things before. And then also how Matt and I, my lovely husband, were making investments before. We'd been making very small investments in various startups, and I've been helping with DD teams. I was starting to really kind of pluck like different examples from that. So one of them is the Lean Product Playbook, and I still refer to it a lot. So using people to understand all the theory, Lean Product Playbook 1. Number 2, get a product mentor. I cannot recommend this highly enough. So when you're in the early stages of building your startup, you're just naturally the product manager. You're the product owner. You know the most in the whole business about the product. You care the most about it. You're naturally doing all the product things, but you don't really know what the names of those things are, right? So you kind of have to upskill yourself on the theory to apply to the practice that you're doing. Having a product mentor who's like 48 steps ahead of you, who maybe has been fractional product manager in some different places or has led product from very early stage to something more scaled up, is an amazing way to support you and get them to mentor you for free.
Where do you find those people?
So that's really cool. I got this amazing piece of advice from Olympia Yaga, who's one of the most amazing founders in the country. She had this great way of asking mentors to work with her. She said, I go to people and I say, will you give me 1 hour once a month for 6 months, and I'll come before the hour and I will have something prepared. I'll bring something prepared for us to solve a problem. So I heard this and I was like, that's such a great idea because it's time bound. And if you can approach people way more experienced than you, if you're only asking them for 1 hour a month for 6 months, and you've got a huge opportunity to get lots of information out of them and support. So I went to Oliver and I put together a proposal which said something like this. I'd like you to be my product mentor because I'd seen how he worked. I was really impressed by him. What's it like? What I promise to you is that you will deliver 1 hour a month for 6 months. I'll come to you with a problem so that we're prepared every time. I said, what's in it for you? And I think I labeled things like, I know that I'm extremely coachable. So everything you say, I'll actually listen to. I'm really high execution. So everything you say, I'll listen to and I'll do it. So you'll get to see the fruits of your kind of labor. And also I really make a really good cup of tea and I'm always punctual. So they're like really small things, but you have a lot more value to offer than you think.
I love how you framed it both ways. This is what I get out of it, but this is also what you can get out of it, which I think sometimes is easy to forget or not do. So you mentioned as well in the beginning, you talked about staying in the product space for as long as possible. Why do you think that is important? And when do you know it's time to move on from the problem space and do something else?
That's such a great question, Julia. So I probably think about staying in the problem space from the way that we looked at it in Dispute Buddy. So really on in Dispute Buddy, part of the reason why the business came about was a number of different people's experience in gathering texts and emails and messages for legal disputes. And here was my experience. So mine was that I had to get a family court to make my children safe in 2020. And my lawyer said, hey, send me all the texts and messages and emails, anything you've got between you and your ex-husband for the last 2 or 3 years so that I can use it as evidence to prepare your affidavit. And I was like, what? I don't even know what that means. What do you mean collect them? From where? How do I send them to you? Do you not have like some kind of platform or something I can just upload them to? No, you had to screenshot everything. And so there I was in the problem space, like not even knowing it because obviously Dispute Buddy wasn't a thing back then. So whenever I think now about Dispute Buddy and how to solve this problem, I think back to those feelings, like what was that like? What was I trying to do? What was the outcome that I was trying to achieve? All I was trying to achieve was, I was trying to, in the early stages of Dispute Buddy, we thought that the problem was, how do we quickly upload texts and emails? And like often that's where people start. It's often a speed thing or a cost thing, isn't it? But speed and cost just mask the deeper things underneath it. They usually mean something else. And when we kind of built quite a few early proof of concepts, and then went into a code base. And then when I tested that, I learned something really different. And when I was in Techstars, which I'd just been in from September to December, I tested the method of screen recording whilst scrolling through messages and uploading them into our system. That was the method that we'd hypothesized that would work because we thought it'd be quicker. What I learned really quickly when I really listened was it's not actually necessarily about speed. It's about I don't want to read a single painful one of these messages. That was underneath. That was the pain point. If I'd have stayed really focused on how do I improve the screen recording, how do I improve the dashboard that it's going to come into, I'd have missed this whole thing. And what actually was happening was every time I was trying to book people to come and do a screen recording, and I was kind of needed a bit of concierge service with it, I noticed that loads of them were cancelling the meeting with me and they wouldn't even engage with it. And then the ones that did engage with it, when we were screen recording, I sort of almost had to take the phone off them and do it myself because I could see that they were like, oh God, I sort of forgotten that happened. And I was like, this is the real problem. And here it is. I've been asked by my lawyer, or I'm a self-represented litigant, to find and present all of the texts and emails in my legal dispute. But number one, I don't want to relive and re-traumatize myself doing it. I don't know what I'm looking for. It's frightening. So I'm going to put it off, or I'm just going to get re-traumatized. So that, because I didn't get too close to the way that we were doing it, screen recording, and I went back to the problem space and going, what's actually going on here? I found something else. And so that has led to the MVP that we're building at the moment. We're about 90% there, which is really exciting. We'll be launching in the next couple of weeks with a beta group, which is actually, I had to scrap the entire code base, which is painful, right? No one wants to do that. I had to scrap the whole thing and go, okay, we're going to download an app. We're going to find those texts and messages for you. Download the app onto your desktop so that you own your own data, find and extract all those texts and WhatsApps. Then we're going to put them all into chronological order and put them in a PDF. And then you still haven't had to look at a single one. All you've had to do is put in the contact names of the people who you're involved with. And then we'll give you a PDF output. And actually, even if you don't want to read it then, we'll just email it to your lawyer. Eventually, you have to engage in it, right? But what I learned was that, or what I'm hypothesizing is that people want to, if you can get them as far along the journey as possible, engage in the legal dispute with the relevant information, then they'll feel ready to get involved.
Yeah, that's incredible. I really love how you went one step further. You know, startups at the end of the day, like they're all about value and giving someone value. And you actually found the emotional value of that problem, which I think that people engage with all the time, but it's so hard to find out what it is.
It's really hard to find. I'll tell you quite a funny story as well. Another data point, which is really cool. So when we're in Techstars, and for anyone listening doesn't know what Techstars is, it's a US based investor that runs tech accelerator programs around the world. And there's one in Sydney. It's been running for 2 years and is really competitive to get into. We were really, really fortunate to get into. I was delighted when I got found out I was in September. So you go and you take part in a 13-week accelerator program, and it's like a mentor-driven accelerator where you get lots of tools and tips, and not tips, but like actual practical ways of improving, de-risking the success of your startup, and alongside investment from a US investor. Amazing. So one of the things in the program, which is run by Kirsten Hunter, absolutely, totally incredible. We call her the business agent, like the top business agent. So what she did was she set up this structure called Mentor Magic. So because it's a mentor-driven accelerator, you've got to match up the founders with the mentors. So we did the 12 startups that went through the program. There were 60 mentors available. And so we did a speed dating with them. Each one of them, we met them for 15 minutes. And this is what I learned. I learned this also because Kirsten helped me pull out this insight. Every mentor, and lots of them were investors as well. So I've also seen this mirrored in investor conversations. So I'll show them Dispute Buddy and I'll kind of explain to them what it's like. And if they haven't been through a dispute, they go, oh yeah, that sounds really interesting. I mean, like, is the market that big for that? It's like, it sounds a bit niche. Is it not a feature? It's more of a feature, not a product. And kind of like, I don't even know if, is that would people pay for it? That's what happens there. So what I learned was that if you've been through this, you know how horrible this pain is. And if you haven't, you've got literally no idea how awful it is. So that gave me two really big insights. One of them was that in selling Dispute Buddy, trying to get people to understand what the value is, I'm going to have to use all the stories of people who've been through it to explain to the people who haven't how awful this is and how useful Dispute Buddy will be for them. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that the pain is emotional. It's not
Yeah.
speed, it's emotional.
And, it's obvious that you went through a lot of customer interviews and really tried to understand how people feel about this. What are some underrated ways to get real customer insights without spending a lot of money? How do you get people to actually talk to you?
That's a great question. At the beginning, when we were reading through Dan Olson's book, and I was like, so how do we do these customer discoveries? And then my deep love is efficiency and process. I really love them. That's how we ended up selling our magazine publishing business for such an amazing multiple, because I turned the whole thing into a process. So when someone wanted to buy the whole business, it was just a login and all of the processes and how to do everything was already in there. The efficiency is my deep love. So I kind of want to work out, how do you do customer discovery interviews in the most efficient way possible to get the most insights for like literally no money? And I worked out as well when we owned Uno magazine, I knew that when we'd sold it, like part of the reason why we sold it for so much money is because I built all these systems and efficiencies and the whole process. It was just basically a turnkey. We just handed over a login to someone, they could run the whole business themselves. We'd even from Bay of Plenty, this tiny region, we built and launched a magazine for North America with the processes that I'd sort of designed in the business. So when I started reading through Dan Olson's book about how to do this, I kind of started to kind of systematize the process of finding people to interview, the interview that we did, and then how to glean the insights from it and then turn them into action, whether that's features or something completely different. Might not just be features. And so as I started to kind of build this, I'd found Notion, which I fell in love with, which we use all the time. And I built out this whole structure in Notion with designed the script. And then after every interview, I would iterate the script. So I was always saying the same thing to everybody. I find it really important to ask exactly the same things of each person or in each cohort. So I do each block of interviews in a block of 5 usually. And I'll try and go, okay, I'm going to take people from that customer group. I'm going to do that, then do people from that customer group there, people from this customer group here, blocks of 5, then gather the insights, then give them then kind of collate them into features and then give them to the engineering team and say, this is what I want you to do. So, and I'll sometimes bring the engineering team into that process to go, this is what I learned. How possible is this? Is this hard? Like, how long is this going to take? How complex is it? And then I try and work out what the value accrued to the user will be, balancing up what the cost of the building that feature is going to be. I think that one of the things I'm deeply passionate about, and actually me and Doon, who runs the Female Startup Club in Australia, we recognize that particularly women founders who don't have access to as much capital as men founders, they need tools to get them closer to product market fit quicker and on no money. And the best way to do that is really rigorous customer discovery, because it costs you nothing. It costs you the cost of Notion, that's $10 a month, $10 a month to have your Notion. You can build out the templates, which Doon and I are about to launch a load of templates as well on the Female Startup Club through her newsletter, so that people can do exactly this, tools to write your script, and then you can just do them. So for me, I was like, okay, I need to interview people who've been through a dispute, lawyers, because they know what success looks like, right? They know what they need to hand in to the judge. And if I can get some judges, which everyone told me I wouldn't be able to do, I ended up getting one from New Zealand, one from Australia. So that was really good. And then we could use these to iterate Figma designs and then retest Figma designs. So Figma, what's that? That's like $20 or $30 a month, something like that. If there's any one of you, you can do some online YouTube tutorials to learn how to use Figma, or you can find people on Fiverr to design for you. And you can do like, I think I did about 4 or 5 or 6 rounds of user testing with prototypes before cutting a single line of code, before paying someone to do that. I'm non-technical, so can't write code. So, I could get really, really close to what the problem was without spending any money. And I think that's like key.
I really like what you're saying there about getting really close without writing a single line of code. Um, I think that that's really important. And for me at Dummy, I did the opposite. We started, I think, coding way too soon because we had the resources. And yeah, making it lean and forcing yourself to really think the problem through and really get it right before going there and pressing play on development is such a time saver for the future, because then you're not needing to rebuild things as often. You kind of get it right from the start, and then you can keep building on top of it.
You don't build a lot of technical debt.
Yeah,
like, there's so much. It's quite hard though. Like if there's 2 of you, and like one of you is like you or like me, which is like product owner, and one of you is technical, it's irresistible for technical people to not build technical products. It's irresistible. And so I think that's where real kind of proper alignment, and when I say alignment, I mean exactly the same view between you of going, what are we trying to do here? We are trying to solve a problem for the customer. And you go, what do we think is the best way to solve that problem for the customer? Let's map out our process before we do any strategy or anything like that. Where's the information that we can learn from? So that's kind of where I started, where I was like, how do I go to all my founder friends who are much further than me and go, what do you wish you'd done at the beginning that you didn't do? Like I ask that to people all the time. If you could go back, if you could go back like 2 years ago, what would you have done differently? And so that tells you literally the playbook of how you should do it. But you have to make sure that you and your co-founder or co-founders have that same view, because if you don't, then it's really difficult to build like that. I actually don't know how you would do that. Like the only 2 co-founders I've had are my husband. I love owning business with my husband. He is so incredible, so cool, so funny, so clever. And our skills are really different. And so we owned Uno together and I loved it. It was an amazing feeling. But I still felt like I couldn't decide the strategy on just how I wanted to do it. But obviously, because there's 2 of us. When I had my ex-co-founder and dispute buddy, we thought that we were quite aligned, but we really weren't when it came to it. And so I think that that's really key. Like imagine at the start of Dummy, if you just said, because likely what happens, and this is a human thing, is your co-founder goes, I've seen this thing and I built this tool because it was really annoying me in my own life. I built this tool, like, let's use it. And so you've immediately started out by building code. It's impossible to avoid. They're not going to go, let me map out a potential strategy. They're just going to build something to solve themselves. And then you start getting led by that code and by that particular solution. And then it's much harder to pull yourself back into the problem space or have that person do it. So when you start with a big code base, it's much harder to get back in problem space. I noticed that when I was brought in as like a sort of product manager, get them to market for Workzilla, which is a really amazing legal tech startup in Sydney, run by, listen to this for the founders, Danny King, woman, Dave Norris, man, and Dan Smalley, man. Dave, Danny, and Dan. So they had a huge code base because Dave, the CTO, had built this huge code base for Danny and her legal company to help her, because she was using ActionStep, which is practice management software, great for running workflows in legal companies, but not great for making business intelligence decisions around things like, who's my highest performing lawyer? And where have we got most money locked up where we've done work but haven't invoiced people? It's not great for that. It's more centered around workflows to kind of get cases through. So Dave wrote a load of code so that Danny, to sit on top of ActionStep, so that Danny could make some business decisions. And they were like, this is amazing. We should sell this to other law firms, which is a great idea. And so they brought me in to put together their kind of business operations, turn the 3 of them into an actual proper startup with some structure and business operations and some product, and sort of get them right front. And it was really challenging to keep bringing them back to the problem space because they were constant in the solution space because they've got this code base. It's not that they're wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's just the reality of how that goes. And as you know, building is messy. It's messy.
Yeah, totally, 100%. And sometimes, when you see actually we've gone the wrong direction, like you have, and you wanted to delete the code base and start fresh. If you already have a code base, it's more painful to do that because you have that bias of,
it's
all this
horrific.
work is going to be, like deleted, which is a mental block that is harder to get over than if you didn't have anything, for sure.
Not though if you keep your brain in the problem space. If you stay constantly advocating for your customer in your energy, it's not that hard to let go of things. That's how I feel. I don't find it's hard to let go of things. If I really go, if I was a customer, if I used that would annoy me. Therefore, I want something else. So let's build that something else. And if anyone wants to use Dispute Buddy for themselves for free, and you're listening to the podcast, you can just email me, jenny@disputebuddy.co, and I'll let you download the app and extract your texts and emails from people that you could select. And hopefully you're not in a dispute, but if you are, it'll be very useful for you. But if you're not, it's quite fun exercise.
Hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening. We release new episodes every 2 weeks, so make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts so you don't miss a new episode. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.